A major food crisis hit our senior high schools across the country, and this is a subject of a major conversation this entire week. On Ghana Connect tonight, we're going to be hearing from teachers, the heads of the schools, parents, and of course, some of the students themselves. Let's have a conversation because it's thrown up this conversation that we've been having over time about the sustainability of the free SHS. This is Ghana Connect. My name is Evan Smith, and welcome to the show tonight. If you missed what happened this week, let me just give you a sense of the challenge. Sense there of what happened this week when the food crisis hit the schools. As we know, the problem persists, although some food has begun to trickle in, dispatched by the education ministry. And so that's where we are tonight, and we're going to be having a conversation, as I said earlier, with the parents, the teachers, the students themselves, and all of you who are listening and joining us because of the central conversation this throws up about the sustainability of the free SHS. The question we'll be asking tonight, on the back of parents saying this week that allow us to bear part of this cost. What about you? Is it time for government to review the free SHS and allow parents to participate in the funding of the program? And what burden are you willing to take on yourself in the midst of this IMF conversation that we are already having in an attempt to get a bailout, because the economy, as you know, is in a major crisis. Kwaku, who do we have connecting with us tonight?
Evans, Anthony Ziga is a parent of an SHS student in the Oti region. He's on with us. Peter Kofi Kilson is a youth activist. He's connecting with us. Innocent Kudu Medifo, project management consultant. Charles Ajete Sowa is an administrator of the Council of PTAs. Antiaba, that's not her real name, is a headmistress in an SHS. And then Walker, not also his real name, is a teacher in a senior high school. So Evans, we've done a poll trying to gauge the views of Ghanaians about what they make of the situation. The question, like you said, in the wake of food shortages in senior high schools across the country, are you willing to bear part of the cost of free SHS? So Evans, the poll is interesting. If you look at the Joy 99.7 FM platform, 60% of the votes we have so far says yes, they are willing to chip in their support, whilst 40% says no.
Okay, so the majority say they're willing, they want to bear part of the burden when it comes to free SHS. So the comments are interesting. I'll read some for you pretty shortly, but I want to quickly pick up. So this is the Joy FM page. What does the Joy News page suggest? Similar, because there too, when the question was asked, are you willing to bear part of the cost of the free SHS in the wake of the crisis we've seen this week? Majority say yes. 55% say yes, they'll bear part of the cost. 45% say no. They are not willing to bear part of the cost, and the comments reflect that. Atanga and Nabila says that my rector back in senior high school told me that free things cost in the long run. Reverend Father Pamphilio Tangan is what he's quoting. The DK says, if we stop paying Woyome, we can feed the lads. Another very interesting perspective there that he's bringing to the table. Ibi thinks says there is money in the country. The inability of the free SHS to thrive is as a result of corruption and mismanagement. Government's unnecessary spending is what has brought us this far. No dime will be contributed by any parent. The free SHS has come to stay, and it must work. So that's one person who says, well, I don't want to contribute. If you fix the corruption and you fix the mismanagement, it should work fine.
Indeed, some of the comments also on the Joy FM Twitter handle. It says, I think the government and GES, as a matter of urgency, should let the lower classes, Form 1 and 2, go home so that the small supplies available will be used to cater for the Form 3s until a better arrangement is made. Very interesting suggestion there. This one, Mimi, the violent captain, says, day schools can be free. Free tuition, but boarders should pay for the food and accommodation. He has some people agreeing with him. This one says, then it won't be free, no, more like subsidized education, something of the sort.
So that could be a problem. I mean, if you're thinking like a politician, because it's been branded well as free SHS. So once you say, well, you're reviewing it to allow parents who can afford to pay or parents to take care of the food, Noble's point is then you can no longer call it free SHS policy. You call it subsidized education. And then all quickly you see how it won't sound sexy to the politicians because it's a slogan that wins elections and wins the votes. It's easy to comprehend. It's free, okay. So yeah, we'll see. But the people say, majority say they are willing to pay. So why not?
Willing to pay, indeed. So Evans, let's go to the people who are connecting with us. Let me start from Peter Kofi-Kilson, and let me put this question that we've put on our social media platform. Please unmute for us. The question I want to put to all of you: in the wake of these food shortages in senior high schools, are you willing to bear part of the cost? Kilson.
Yes, a very good evening to you, the panelists.
Kilson, this time around,
hello.
yes or no? Are you willing to bear part of the cost? Then I'll come for substantive points.
Yes, I think there should be an arrangement for cost sharing.
Right. Let me go to Charles Ajete Soa. You are an administrator of the Council of PTA. Are you willing to burden share with government?
Thank you. Yes, we are very ready because we value education, and we think that in the current crisis, where students will have to stay home and compromise their education, the quality of education, it is only important for us to value education and then share the cost with government.
Right. Antiaba, you are connecting with us. Are you willing to burden share? Antiaba?
Yes.
Are you willing to burden share?
Yes, we should do the cost sharing. Yes.
Right. Walker, are you willing to also pay something? Hello, Walker.
Hello.
Yes. Walker, are you willing to pay something?
Yes. Looking at the situation we found ourselves, I'm willing to bear some of the cost.
Right. Let me start the conversation from you, Antiaba. This week, the news was all over, from the Upper East to Upper West, back to the Eastern region. There were management of schools threatening to shut down schools if food supplies did not come in early. We know Antiaba is not your real name, but you manage a senior high school. How bad was the situation?
So as was aired, in fact, food shortages is all over. If we call our sister heads in other regions, it is the same. As we speak, if there's any food supply from the Tuesday that they claimed, then maybe those schools that find themselves in the regional capitals, probably, because we are talking of a situation whereby when the food comes, it is sent to the buffer stock at the regional capital, and each school is supposed to go and pick her products. And so depending on how distant your school is from the regional capital, we are talking about the fuel that you'd have to use to go and pick up those products for feeding of the kids. Meanwhile, we're expecting that the products would be brought to the doorstep of the school. But now you need fuel to even go and pick the food. So as we speak, maybe our sisters in schools within the regional capitals probably have food, but we don't have that information.
So the government promised that this situation was going to normalize by the end of the week. You are saying that there are still some schools who still don't have food, and that it may be those in the capitals who
Probably.
may have had access.
As we speak, there are a lot of us around. I mean, we try to call other sister schools in other regions to find out what is happening. The story is no different.
Have you had any communication in terms of why some of your schools haven't had their share of the food yet?
The fact is that when the food comes, information is given and you are supposed to go and pick. But the food has...
Your call has been put on hold. Please.
Hello, Antiaba. Antiaba will come back on. Let me go to someone who has been managing a school before, the PTAs. They used to be very critical in terms of how these schools are managed. Now, they don't have so much of a role in terms of how these schools are managed because of free senior high school. Charles Ajete Soa, in the previous years before free SHS, you parents could chip in to help when some of these issues came up. How has this situation affected you? I mean, you've been monitoring the situation. How bad is it? Hello, Charles. Hello, Charles. Okay, so Peter Kilson, if you can hear me and you can unmute.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
You've been monitoring the reports. You also have siblings. How bad has been the situation for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The situation has been terrible. I've been following the news, and the reports and the concerns that have been raised so far indicate that the CSHS is at its dying embers, and that if any proper mechanism is not put in place, we would be headed into the ditch. I mean, I read a news article right before this program, and the news article was, captured by John on the 29th of October 2020. I think Charles, that is the head of, assisted schools or something, they had a conference at the Wesley Girls High School in Cape Coast. And one of the concerns that were laid out was the fact that it has been observed that the activities of the PTA has been gradually dying out because of free SHS. I mean, free SHS comes with a mass absorption of cost, and that it has been increasingly difficult for schools to even explore other financial options. I mean, of cost sharing or sharing the burden altogether. You would understand or you recall that schools that even intended to, take some extra fees from students, some of the head teachers were, were excommunicated. Some of them were given indefinite suspension and all of that. Some of them too have gone into different forms of punishment because the government thought that they had breached, the instruction they had given them not to take any fees or to make school fees or to make education absolutely free. I think when all of these instances were happening, we didn't take cue, or we probably didn't understand from the perspective of the head of teachers why some of them were taking some fees to probably complement, their budget. I mean, the huge budget that they end up expending every academic year. Now, the reality has hit us, and we are back into this conversation asking parents to, bear themselves. So, are we going to,
Hello, Kilson. Let me go to Charles.
recall some of the teachers who have been sacked, or are we going to, retract our words? Are we going to retract our words or the kind of punishment that were meted out to some of the heads of schools for putting up sure that some of the items that were being bought or some of the budgetary items that were being expended by the schools were covered with the support of the parents. You would admit that in the past, PTA fees or PTA dues used to be a massive component of the school fees and used to aid the schools, in their function of the delay in the release of government subvention and grants. The senior high schools would usually go and get some.
So Kilson's line is breaking. We'll fix that.
They are able to credit their, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
It's better now.
Yeah, as and when government credits, what do you call it? The account of these schools, they are able to fulfill their financial obligation to their creditors. In the past, PTA dues used to be used to complement some of these financial expenditures by the school while these schools wait for governments to come in. But currently, we do not find some of these instances. You go to some of the schools and PTAs have contributed to massive infrastructural, projects, amenities, and etc. in the schools. You don't find them again. And the schools are currently suffocated. Now, the schools have had to rely on Old Students Association to put up, financial muscle to be able to equip such schools in these difficult times. How many schools have, resilient alumni like the Infantsipins, the Wesley Girls, the Achimotas, and etc.? So a school like Twasi, that probably doesn't have any outstanding alumnus would have to suffer the fate of a policy that was not well thought.
Okay.
We are simply here because of somebody's ineptitude, somebody's incompetence. And for me, our government humbled itself enough to accept the concerns of parents from the onset that, look, we understand that education must be free. In fact, it is clearly stipulated in the Constitution that education must be progressive. The framers of the Constitution, in their own wisdom, understood the reason why they clearly indicated in Article 25 that secondary school education must be progressive, because they knew that if we are going into it en bloc, it is very difficult to sustain.
Right.
Now we came into 2017 and damned all the consequences, ignored all the odds, and went into this policy without recourse to, the consequences that may bring
we
onto
could face
the ordinary Ghanaians.
Yeah.
And so for me, I clearly believe that it is time for us to go back to the table and review free SHS. I'm sure now review doesn't mean cancel to the president. And the president
indeed Kilson, in the lead up to the 2020 election, the nomenclature about review and what it meant came up. Kilson, I'll come back to you again. Okay. But I want to go to a parent, because their children are the ones feeling this pinch in schools. Anthony Ziga, you are joining us on the phone. Anthony, how bad was the situation in your school? Did you get calls from your children to support them?
Last Friday evening around 4 o'clock, that she's in the third year, that the whole day they were not fit. They were living on Gary, and Gary too has finished, so she's hungry. Then I asked what happened. They said the kitchen was closed. The teachers too were not on the compound. Then should I send money for you to come back? He said no. What happened? That they are writing mosque, so the teachers should not allow them to go. I said no. You can't stay by starving. You have to come back. Sunday early morning, she called again that the way the thing is, she need to come home. Now so quickly, then I sent her money to come back. Currently, she's with me in the house attending classes.
When do you think she can go back to school, given now that the government says the situation is being resolved?
Yeah, we are only waiting for the school authorities to fall on the parent, and now the situation is okay. So the parents, the student to come back home. Other than that, for me, I don't think the way it is now, if there's no change, I don't think I can release my daughter to go back to the school.
Interesting. And
so your the thinking I'm getting is that you prefer her to stay at home than go to school because of the situation that is currently the school is dealing with.
The school is far from where I am. I'm not. The child is not with me around the school, around my area. So for me to be at home, feed myself well, and she being there angry, I prefer you to be with me to attend private classes and then go in for the examination. If the situation didn't change, but if the school authorities call us now, the situation has changed, they should come back. Why not?
And this is a very interesting one. So now you're having to pay extra for private classes for your child.
Yeah, and I'm paying for.
Okay, only because of the food problem.
Yes.
Okay, and so
because she lives far away from me, and I'm also afraid that if she didn't come home, she can indulge herself in maybe a different attitude. Yeah.
Right. Let me go back to Charles, because you manage. Okay, Charles is not there. Let me take the perspectives of Kilson again. When I spoke to you earlier on, you said you were willing to chip in something. Government has said they can do this. Why are you supporting government when government clearly says we can do this? These are challenges that will come up, and we are going to fix it.
Kwaku. Hello.
Kilson, yes.
Hello, Kwaku. Yes. I mean, it is quite evidential that currently Russia accounts for some 30% of Ghana's imported grains, 50% of slab, and 39% of fertilizer. one of the main or fundamental reasons why we are here and we are here complaining about food shortage is because of government's own, failure to adopt locally, grown solutions to solve some of our food supply issues and agricultural issues. You would recall that government initiated the so-called touted, planting for food and jobs, with the idea that we would have enough food in a buffer stock to be able to, cater for the hungry population. For population in times of crisis and circumstances. That is the main idea behind the creation of that policy. And so, when the policy is expected to manifest itself in such crisis, there is absolutely nothing to brag about. And so, a government that is committed to fixing such a problem should be bold enough to even oust the agriculture minister for failing to undertake such projects credibly. And so, if food were readily available, we would not have gotten to this level. Kwaku, you and I know that when we go to the secondary schools, the most consumed, staple or delicacy are corn foods. So you have fancy kinky, you have gankinky, and other fancy foods. In my school in GSTS, we used to consume corn foods 3 times a day. 3 times a week. And then I think we even have a breakfast called it's made with corn or something. So that's part of the lunch. We have about 4 staples of delicacy that are consumed by secondary school students for GSTS, my school. So you can imagine for other schools and how many times in a week students consume corn food. We are in the rainy season. What is the expectation? The expectation is that we should have buoyant supply of maize foods, because maize crops usually don't take a lot of time to cultivate and to be harvested.
So that government could raise some of this food for the national buffer stock.
What I'm saying, yes, exactly. So what I'm saying.
So Kusin, hold it there. I'll come back to you. Let me go to someone that manages the schools. They see all that is going on. Charles Ajete Soa is the administrator of the Council of PTA.
Yeah, I'll come to Charles shortly, but I'm curious with what we heard from the parent. The child has left school. The child is with him at home. He's spending money now to try and get private tuition for the child because of the food problem. We have the headmistress of one of the schools who connected with us earlier, and she's on the line with us. Antiaba, you are with us. We have a parent earlier who told us a pretty touching story about the child with him now home. He's investing his own resources now to try and get some private training teaching for her, because obviously the food problem persists in their school. I wonder whether in your school you've seen some of your students leave, go home, or parents come take them out because of this problem.
With the issue of students leaving because of the food situation, I think that I could say those students are not ready to put in any sacrifice, because you see, things had been better. And so if we have a situation where things are not as it used to be, it is all about how you manage the situation too. It's very, very important. What we are saying, the most important thing is that for the students not to starve. When it comes to starvation, then there's a real problem. But where we are talking of quantities reducing, or the quality probably being a little compromised, sometimes even in our own homes, we have challenges, and we try to manage some of these things. So for students to leave school just because the quantity of food has been reduced and all that, that one, I wouldn't subscribe to it. And I think that if we have such students embarking on such journeys, they should be ready to sacrifice, because we all went through some sacrifices before we got to where we were.
But Madam,
the problem...
Interesting perspective there. Stay with me, Antia, but I want to bring in a parent on the point you made, because, of course, we've all been to school. Anthony Ziga, you make that point earlier. What do you make of the headmistress' point on this?
The headmistress talking, I can hear she's an elderly person. In my daughter's case, it isn't that the size of the food is not okay. The total kitchen was shut down for a whole day. Nothing was cooked for the student. Then the following day, it continued for the second day. Come on, what do you think will happen? Quickly, I have to make arrangement for such child to come home. Are you understanding me?
So in your case, there was no food at all?
Already, she has even made a case some time ago that the size of the food is not okay. I say manage it. But this time, the whole kitchen is shut down. As a parent, what can you do? As a parent, quickly, you have to let your child come home. Rather than let her stay there and indulge herself in different attitude. No. So in my case, that is what I think it can help me. But I don't know somebody's case. Are you getting me?
Antaba, you get the parents' frustration?
Yes. So in this situation where there wasn't any food at all served in the school, yes, that is a peculiar issue. But where we have students going home because the quantity of food has been reduced or the quality has been compromised a little and whatever. Now, with this strike action that happened, now our superiors wrote to us, to our regional directors, that as management, we should ensure that the students are safe, that the environment is safe for them to be there. Yes, we knew there wouldn't be teaching because teachers were on strike. Non-teaching too, we had them also on strike. But for every school, the matron, the domestic builder, is part of management. So each member of management is to ensure that somehow along the line, the normal routine goes on, including eating, so that even if they would eat that underweight food or, quite compromised, quality of food or whatever, then you wouldn't, as a student or as a parent, you wouldn't then have the cause to come and pick your child because the child is starving. With this instance that the parents give, it means that the students were starved the whole day. That is not what management was supposed to do in the various schools. And so I think that, unfortunately, in the situation of his daughter or whatever, there wasn't any food at all. So that one, as a parent, when you hear, definitely you would want to save the situation, probably for your child. But could you imagine if all parents in that school had decided to go and withdraw their children? Then we would have had a different case altogether. And so for a lot of schools in their country, they were able to talk to the domestic builders to have a skeletal staff, kitchen staff especially, at least to feed the children with the food that is already not enough. But at the end of the day, we were not supposed to starve the kids.
I mean, very, very interesting personal perspective. And then we are getting a better picture into what really happened in the schools and the very difficult decisions both the teachers, the heads, and the parents had to make in the midst of the crisis. I mean, Mr. Soa, you are with the Council of PTAs. What more can you tell us about this very complex negotiation that needed to happen between parents, the teachers, the heads, even the students themselves in the midst of the crisis? Does it reflect the general picture as it possibly came to you at your outfit?
Thank you very much. Yes, it does. The crisis as we speaking, of, it's not an easy thing. It's been very tough for parents. And then the school has to be managed. Like Mr. Ziga was saying, where the whole kitchen was shut down, there was no way the parent would sit there and allow the child to starve. You understand? But where there was this kind of reduced quantity, then we expected parents will go there with their provisions to supplement whatever the school managers were giving to them. That was what we actually communicated to some of the parents, if not all. So that's the situation. The situation is quite dire. And therefore, we impressed upon government to do something. And we wrote in our two press releases, that was what we were saying. But especially where we realized that the negotiations with the teachers was not even yielding the right results, we thought that the school should be completely shut down, leaving the form trace of both the BC and writers and then the WASI writers. Fortunately, yesterday we had good news. So we are still thinking that government should expedite action on the feeding, situation in the schools.
The point you raised there about getting a Form 1s and Form 2s to go home, someone shared the comment on Twitter about that. Walker, you are a teacher. Were there situations where you had to feed students out of pocket?
Simply yes. So many times, not just once. So many times, because as my co-panelist has already stated, the quality and the quantity of the food given to these students, because of many financial challenge and sustainability of this free SHS, has become a burden on the ordinary teachers. You have no option than to help these students to survive. It got into a time where teachers decided in my school to call the parents to also support their works. And these parents, as we know them, used to cook and bring the food to their wards in the school, because virtually the dining halls were not operating. So it has been a very dire consequence, very bad situation in schools, which impede academic work, especially when you are a teacher and you are in the classroom where students are complaining of hunger. You cannot effectively teach. They will not concentrate, because a student with no food in the stomach cannot virtually learn. So it is a situation which is killing the quality of education in our schools. It has gotten to a time the government has to review the SHS policy, allow parents who can afford to contribute and pay. There is a situation. We have a headmistress on the panel. You can ask. Some of the parents ordinarily come to school to support financially, but the headmasters are afraid to take in that money to support, because the moment you are caught with that act, you'll be reprimanded. So this is a situation which is impeding the quality of education that the ordinary Ghanaian or students want. So I think this situation is also taking a toll on the students and teachers in class. As you know, the teachers, our salaries are very, very, very low, nothing to write home about. But you cannot afford to not help students to get food to eat. So it is a situation which must be relooked at. And the policy, I agree, we should review the policy, allow those who can afford to pay, and this will help us to get the education that we want. Otherwise, this time, it is getting to a time where we cannot hold on classes, because if the students are not getting food, they will not virtually come to the class. So it is a situation which is impeding the teaching and learning in the classroom.
Right.
Virtually, if the teachers and the headmistress and masters will tell you.
Right, Antiaba, you've been in management for a while. You are still a headmistress. Would you ascribe these challenges, these food challenges and other challenges that we've seen in recent times, to the free senior high school program in particular?
Well, I think that the challenge now has been with the food supply. the food supply, like I said initially it was better. So the issue is what went wrong? Because initially we would be in our schools in all the regions, and then they will bring the food to your doorstep. And then you also and then they would give you the right quantities. And then you also make sure that you get your kitchen staff to prepare the food for the students. So at first, it was fine. The issue is what went wrong. And so if the issue is with the buffer stock, now their supplies and their strategies that they were using is not, being directed as they used to do at first. They should revisit that and then make sure that there are enough supplies on time for us to use it to feed the kids. Now, if the problem is with the issue of funding, then if we have other stakeholders coming on board to support, so that at the end of the day, as heads of schools, wherever we find ourselves, all that we want is for them to bring enough food, enough money for us to use to prepare for the kids. And we believe that when that is done, as simple as that, teaching and learning definitely would improve. Because like you were saying, when the students are hungry, concentration definitely goes down. So the issue is what went wrong with the initial stages of the free SHS. It was perfect. They were bringing the food to your doorsteps, the right quantities, good quality. The question is, what happened? So for us as heads of schools, now looking at the stress that we are going through, our demands are so simple. How they were operating the supplies at first. They need to revisit that. And if it is about funding challenges, they should invite other stakeholders on board to come and support so that at the end of the day, there will be free flow and timely flow of supplies for us to feed the students with. That is all.
Charles, you are into PTA. Do you agree with what Headmistress just said?
Yes, I agree with the headmistress, but I think that what the headmistress has said does not even bring out all the problems that is, that are with the supply of food from the buffer stock. You realize that she said that in the beginning, supplies were coming, continuously and in the right quantities. But if this buffer stock is, budgeted for by the nation, then why is it that from the beginning it flowed, but now that it has traveled a little bit longer, things are going? It means that maybe the Ministry of Finance is not, giving the buffer stock, the finance on time.
Right.
And if it is not coming on time, then it means that they will also not be able to engage their suppliers to be able to supply their schools. And I think that's the bottom line.
Innocent.
And that is why I agree so much with what the headmistress is saying, Antiaba is saying, that other stakeholders must be engaged. And that forms the foundation of this discussion that we are having. That burden share is not, something that we can wish away.
Innocent Kudu Madifo, you coming in at this point in terms of what the headmistress has just said, the PTA agreeing that we all need to come on board, all other stakeholders. What exactly are you willing to do to help get this situation right?
Well, the issue, as the headmistress has said, is about analyzing what has gone wrong. At the point, supplies were coming promptly, and so the kids were fed promptly. Now, if upon analysis it's an issue of funding, then like she suggested, other stakeholders must be brought in, and then we look at the situation, and if it requires parent supporting, then those who can afford can chip in to support. But then someone will ask, how do you determine who can support? And that is the other challenge, determining who can afford and who cannot afford. I don't know how and when a mechanism can be found to, as it were, assess those parents who maybe have a certain minimum threshold of income or earnings, and then wards or kids of those people will then not qualify for this free thing. Whatever will be saved can then be used to assure that, number one, feeding is on time and in the right quantity. And then, of course, we also have problems arising out of pressure on infrastructure as a result of the increased intake. So we've gotten to a point where we need to look at and analyze properly. We need to, as it were, diagnose what actually has caused this crisis at this time.
So, Evans, we have some messages on our WhatsApp console. This one says, Evans, why on earth can't this free education be dropped and scholarships given to real people who are in need? Paying fees for good foundation, nurseries, and primary schools are higher than secondary school fees. So why should all parents have free education with so much hassle? That is Nana from Spintex Road. Kofi from Mahimra here says parents should pay boarding and feeding fees. Those who can't pay for boarding and feeding should enjoy day school. That is Kofi from Mahimra here. Parents should be allowed to pay for accommodation and feeding. These are some messages, Evans, from our WhatsApp console.
I see a very interesting point of view, and I think there's a consensus that a review is needed at the point. Government had said, thankfully, that they will review. The suggestion from the head and I guess the parent is willing. You're willing. I mean, and the polls show it on Ghana Connect that Ghanaians are willing to bear part of the cost. The question is, will government allow that to happen? We'll see. This unfolds with the IMF program and the consultations. Kwaku. And